we thank every one of you for coming out today, and when we were passing the hat, $552 was collected. Thank you very much. Okay, now for the good part of the program. We have been talking today about the two contrasting kinds of visions. And as you're going to see from our panels, the members of our panels reflect our vision, as opposed to Rastetter Summit and the kind of people that he invited, like Scott Walker, Mike Huckabee, and Jeb Bush, and some of the others. And so, just by the mere presence of our panelists today, and we're going to have 3 different panelists, I think the contrast is remarkable just by that. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the format. Each panel is going to be about a 40-minute deal. Each panelist will do a little presentation and talk for 5 minutes, and then there will be a 20-minute Q&A for the panelists. And I want to remind you that you're submitting a question, not a dissertation. I'm giving a speech. But anyway, without any further ado, I want to just introduce the panel members first. Francis Tickey in the middle, who with his wife Susan owns and operates an 80-cow grass-based organic dairy called Radiance Dairy Farm. Francis has a PhD in soil fertility and has served as National Program Leader for Soil and Science for the USDA. Frank James is the Executive Director of Dakota Rural Action and has been a community organizer and farm activist for over 20 years. And Stacy Hartman is co-owner, operator of Small Potatoes Farm, which is a CSA which has been delivering a high-quality, certified organic produce to residents in the Des Moines-Ames corridor for the past 10 years. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over.
No, just one.
This one's good? Okay, good.
That's
Thank you. I was actually in the Ag Summit, the alternative one, really alternative one, for a while this morning, and I'm not going to say a lot about it, but just that the corporate veneer is very thick, and the culture difference between here in this room and that room is like an ocean apart. So we have a lot of work to do. Okay, but I'm going to actually focus on something else. Water quality's been in the news here in Iowa, especially nitrate and drinking water and oil, you know all about it. What I want to talk about is that it's been misrepresented in the media and by our legislators. I keep hearing that our state legislators are saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it, it's nature's fault, it's a flaw in nature. So that's why we have nitrate in water. But what I want to do is point out exactly what's happening here, is that there's a big elephant in the room here, nobody is acknowledging what it is. And that is that corn soybean production over tile-bearing soils is inherently flawed. It's inherently leaky of nitrogen. Even if you use the
Power pack is drained, but if this battery rings, then I'll switch to a tablet.
It's still going to leak nitrogen. Is that corn and soybeans only have roots in the ground for about 4 to 5 months of the year. The other part, most of the year, there are no live roots in the ground. And the soil is always turning nitrogen over, creating nitrate out of the soil organic matter. There's always nitrate there. So when it rains, that'll go down, take the nitrate with it to the ground. So the thing is that nobody is acknowledging in the political work, even in the media, is that it's a flawed system. Once we have to first recognize it, and then we can think about how we can fix it. And even soybeans, for example, soybeans leak nitrogen as bad as corn. Now you may think we don't put any nitrogen on soybeans, but it's because they don't have any live roots in the ground. That's why, of course, by cover crops will help a lot because they'll have live roots and they'll take that nitrate up. We also hear from the industry that we can't have any regulation because one size doesn't fit all. You know, every farm is different. But the thing is that we already have a perfect model for how to regulate this in soil conservation plans. Almost every farm in Iowa has a soil conservation plan that they have to meet a T-value for soil erosion. And they aren't told exactly what they have to do. They can choose from all the practices out there. And they put them in the computer, and the computer will tell if you meet the T-value for soil erosion or not. And if you don't, you got to choose something else until you can meet the T-value. We can do the same thing for water quality. Every farm in Iowa should have a water quality plan by regulation. and we can build, ISU has the data. We know what the effect of all of these practices are, and we can have a T-value for nitrogen in water, and a T-value for phosphorus in water, and so the farmer would put the practices in the model, and it would say if you're meeting T for water quality for nitrogen and phosphorus. If not, you may have to use cover crops, you can use buffer strips, you can use all these practices until you can meet T on your farm. It's very simple and straightforward, and don't let anybody tell you that we can't have regulation, because one size fits all. That's totally a red herring. We don't want to even entertain that. Right. So we can have that, and that's how the only way we're going to really make it in water quality. One more last thing is that I worked with the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. in 1988 and 1992. And in 1988, we launched the National Water Quality Initiative. It's very comprehensive. It was going to be voluntary. We had research, education, technical assistance, and financial assistance. And the idea was that it was a 5-year plan in 1988, and it was going to be voluntary. And if we didn't meet our goals, we have to think about regulation. Well, that was a long time ago. And I say we have what's called, I call the voluntary water quality merry-go-round. Every so many years, new politicians get elected, and they have this bright idea that we're going to have this voluntary program for water quality that's going to solve all our problems. And then they fade away, and then a new one comes up, and you have a new voluntary program. So we have to have regulation, because frankly, without regulation, we're not going to make it happen. It's going to cost money to put these practices in place. In the long run, it's going to be better for the farmers, but it is going to cost money. So we need water quality plans for every farm. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm Frank James from South Dakota. I'm the director of Dakota Rural Action. It's a group in South Dakota with over 800 members across the state that works on a lot of different issues, from environmental to family farm issues, including fighting vehicles as well. In addition, I'm a small farmer with my wife. We have a farm called Fruitopia Farms, and we raise chickens and jalapenos that we make into the jellies and rabbits. Okay. Again, but I'm going to talk about Dakota Rural Action today. One thing that, we've been talking about fighting CAFOs, and when I think of my vision for food and ag justice, fighting CAFOs and stopping is definitely a part of it, regulation, and all the things that have to happen there. But I also look at the people who were inside that tent, and the fact that they included the universities and those folks who are supposed to be training the new group of farmers that we need, and they're not going to do it. And it scares me to death that we are going to have millions of acres turning over and moving from one generation to the next, and we don't have the sustainable farmers trained to take those on. And so 6 years ago, Dakota Rural Action, with the help of Land Stewardship Project, started a Farm Beginnings course. And in those 6 years, we've now trained over 60 beginning farm families through the use of that course and through the use of our farmer network. Our analysis, and it goes across all the groups that use Farm Beginnings. There's 12 groups in 10 states using Farm Beginnings, and the analysis of all those is that 75% or more of the people who've taken Farm Beginnings are still farming, or are farming, or in agriculture, and that plays out in South Dakota. I'm really proud of that. I think we're the only group in South Dakota who can say that we've started anyone farming who wasn't directly related to a farmer. And I think it's important, as we think about this, what food and ag justice means to us, that we think about the things that have to happen to ensure that the sustainable agriculture that we love, that we're practicing, that it goes on to the next generation. And what I want to say is, where their narrative really breaks down, in my mind, is when they say that young people don't want to farm, the young people don't want to work, that there just isn't anything that can happen there. And it maddens me to the point where I can't hardly talk. Because I know how hardworking these young farmers are. I know how much they want it. I know that they came to us with nothing, many of them. And they started a farm. Maybe it's 2 acres. Maybe it's no acres. Maybe they're just borrowing land. That's happened. There's all kinds of neat ways to do this. We also have the 3rd and 4th siblings of farm families that want to stay on the farm. They come take the course. And they come up with a scenario that they can use part of the land on their family farm to start a new enterprise and raise their family on the farm along with their brothers and sisters. And that's reward. And I want to address one other thing that I heard, especially when we read Rastetter's response, and that was feeding the world. And then we need their stuff to feed the world. And I'm tired of arguing with them. I'll just say that, family farmers will feed the world. I don't need to explain it. I don't need to tell them why. But it's the only way that the world will get fed. Because they're not doing it now.
No, they're not.
And I don't care to hear them tell me anymore that we've got to go down the same road again that we have for the last 50-some years of driving my people out of business and off the land so we can feed the world, when the world hasn't been fed for 50 years. So all I'm going to say, and I thought this through, and I've got actually a flipping PowerPoint presentation about why that's wrong. And I quote a Nobel Prize winner about, how it's the economics of the country and the fact that that we don't give the food away once we grow it. We actually want to sell it. And if they don't have money, they can't buy it, and they're still in poverty and they still are hungry. So, and I'm going to flip it anyway, because I don't think I have to explain it. Family farmers feed the world. Enough said. We're done.
You can put it in the stand.
Almost inside your mouth.
Can I put it up here?
No, you guys No, they're do different things.
I was gonna use my hands.
Good luck.
Just use one.
Okay.
Gotta hold that close.
Right. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard a story on the radio many years ago that has stuck with me. I've forgotten many of the details, but I'll recount it to you now gently. It was a Hindu story of a peasant woman who, though poor, had one very prized possession, a diamond earring set in fine gold. A brilliant family heirloom handed down from her great-great-grandmother. One day, while cleaning her meager home, the earring became dislodged, and it was lost. She missed it almost immediately and was heartbroken, to the point of being sickened. If you've ever had a similar experience, you know that feeling. That night, when her husband returned from the fields, he found her on her hands and knees, crawling on the ground in front of their dark house and sifting carefully through the dirt. He asked her for what she was looking. She explained to him that she'd lost her earring in the house. "Foolish woman," he scoffed. "If you lost it inside, why are you crawling around and looking out here?" Tearfully, she sat up and pointed to the bright and full moon above. "Because, husband, this is where the light is." So, what does this old tale from India have to do with the vision for the future of agriculture? I find it quite instructive. First, we've lost something. Many things. Things much more precious than gems. We lost our love and appreciation for good, wholesome, nutritious food. We lost skills. How to garden. How to cook. Not heat things up or open packages. How to really cook. How to preserve food. How to farm. We've forgotten the skills around farming. And by the way, all this going on around us, what Rastetter and his friends are talking about today, this capital, in chemical-intensive industrial monoculture, which is feeding profit to corporations while serving up bullshit for the rest of us. Treating animals like widgets and warehousing tens of thousands of them in buildings, lots, and cages, mired in and above their own waste, is not farming. So what else have we lost? We've lost our cultural memory around food. How real food looks, how it tastes, recipes. At this point, most of us, myself included, don't even know what we don't know. We've lost our rural communities. All the experiences, the opportunities, the relationships, and the values that they once bestowed on our society. We've lost soil, water, clean water, habitat, wildlife. I could go on and on. From a social or a natural perspective, from an abundance that we were handed, we fashioned a wasteland. So those living next to livestock confinements have been especially big losers. They lost everything I just mentioned, plus an additional quality of life, the enjoyment of their property, value in their home, peace of mind, mental, physical, and emotional health. You know this list perhaps better than I do. And like the peasant woman, many of us are sickened, aggrieved by this incalculable loss. As dismal as all this is, I mention one more thing, which is perhaps the most important thing of all. We've lost our democratic aspirations. We've been culturally organized not to rebel, to go with the program, to accede to the dominant narrative. We've been instructed in deference. And as a society, we have largely resigned. Not you, of course, but this resignation is a public manifestation of a private loss, a decline in what people think they have a political and social right to. My vision for the future of agriculture, then, is that as a society, we acknowledge this loss. We know it, we feel it, and we work to reverse it. We reclaim individual self-respect. We reclaim personal empowerment. But where do we start? We become so overwhelmed and so complacent in so many areas of life. Food and agriculture, they're just two of many. The good news is, these are two that we can have a direct and meaningful impact. How? By withdrawing our participation from the industrial food system. Don't give them your money. Don't give them your time. Don't eat their garbage. Not at home, not in a restaurant, not at the grocery store, not at Thanksgiving at Aunt Helen's, not at the church potluck. Always and everywhere, say no to crappy food. For yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren. Say no to food that's raised in a system that exploits the environment, exploits animals, exploits workers, and make a distinction. Especially you farmers, be loud and clear about what farming is and about what farming is not. And it won't be easy. And that brings us back to the story. Like the peasant woman, we too are compelled to look in the light for what we have lost. Too often, her full moon is our political system. Working in politics is familiar, it's comfortable, there seems to be a roadmap, a course to follow. But my friends, remember, the earring, it's in the house. Now don't get me wrong, the politics is important and I admire all who struggle in this area. The politics will have to change, they will, but they will not drive the change. Why? Because at its core, this is not a political problem. This is a heart problem. This is a mind problem. This is a behavior problem. I'd go as far to say this is a spiritual problem. Who we put in office matters, but what we put on our plate plates matters more. The 20th century German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "If you board the wrong train, it's no use running down the corridor in the opposite direction." Well, guess what? This country boarded the wrong train, and many of us are running down the corridor. Warning politicians, trying to convince them, change them, their system, their laws. It's frustrating, it's exhausting, it's demoralizing. And we really thank CCI and other groups who struggle and fight on our behalf. But for so much effort and time, there is relatively little payoff. We're so busy running against this objectionable system that we tend to forget that this wasn't done to us. We are here because of choices consumers made and continue to make. We are not victims. We are not powerless. In fact, we have the most power as consumers. You can choose every day with every meal to exercise your will against the industrial food system. Every dollar you withhold from factory farms, every dollar you spend on sustainable produce, humanely raised meat, dairy, eggs, is a demonstration of your power through better choices. So how do we achieve a vision? My suggestion is simply this. Run against the train if you must. Do what you can. But get a new ticket. Get a different ticket. In fact, get a whole bunch of tickets and give one to everyone in your life. Say no to industrial food, and it will be inconvenient sometimes. At times it will be socially uncomfortable. Sometimes it will be more expensive. But resist the urge to simply look under the light. Move into those dark and quiet places, off stage, where the harder work is done. Within the self, person to person, and in challenging the dominant culture, in changing patterns and lifestyles. Be consistent, be disciplined, be responsible, set an example. Put your fork where your values are. Be courageous and a confident consumer and challenge all those around you to be the same. Don't struggle and wait for a change or a victory in your lifetime, in a decade, or once a year. You can have a victory every day, a moral and personal victory with your food choices. Be an evangelist for good food and responsible agriculture. Change yourself, change your food, and you'll begin to change the world. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a few minutes. Is this on? Test?
Nope.
Test. We've got a few minutes for a 20-minute Q&A. Again, I just want to remind you that you need to ask a question and make it as succinct as possible so that we can allow as many questions. We need to field as many questions as possible. So Matthew is out in the crowd. He'll be controlling the mic. So if you get too windy, you might just pull it away. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to go with that.
I just am wondering because when you go to the grocery store, there is a section that says organic, there's a section that says cage-free, and then I hear that, oh, none of that's true, none of it matters, you really aren't going to get what they're saying you're getting, and that people who actually are producing non-GMO organic food are not being barricaded from the system somehow. So anyway, that's maybe too much of a question. How do you know?
Well, you can do research. You can find out, for example, that organic milk from Horizon Dairy is not the same as organic milk from Organic Valley. One uses CAFOs, one does not. You have to be a diligent consumer. You have to look into things because, like you said, everything is obfuscated. Nothing is made clear. That's the whole point. Your best bet is to buy as local as you can. If you want produce, join a CSA. If you want meat, talk to a farmer that has a few free-range pigs and buy a hog and put it in your freezer. There's things available through the Iowa Food Co-op and other local producers. Seek them out. It takes a little more work, but they're available.
I have a
to also point out that local is great always, but look also if it's really pesticide-free, because we don't know. Organic does mean that you don't have pesticides used, and antibiotics and so on. And the standards, actually, the National Organics Program is going to come out real soon with animal welfare standards, which are going to be, and right now, chickens cannot be caged already in organic, but it's going to require more space. And so it's improving in that regard too. But don't just pick one thing, like GMO-free, because then you don't know about the pesticide side. And organic does mean that no GMOs are used too. I'm on the National Organic Standards Board, but I'm not trying to sell you on it.
James Connery, LSP. I love the story about the loss, but I get the feeling that we've had many losses over the years. It hasn't been just one loss that has added up to where we are right now. And that if we are to reclaim what we want, we're going to have to go back and find where we made our losses and reclaim each of those points. Can you elucidate a point or so where you think we could reclaim?
Well, like I said, I think by just starting to look for, use, and tell other people about good food. I mean, a lot of these losses are attributable to the bad food that we have, whether it's just our own appreciation of it and use of it, or the damage we've done to the environment. If we start demanding better food and putting our money behind it, I think we can make great strides in reversing some of those impacts.
I think we also need to recreate the food system. We need to have models of doing it right, and because the industrial system is going to start to collapse here. And it already is in some ways. And so we need to have models in place to replace it.
One of the reasons I think that the guys inside the tent don't like what we're doing is because there's no drama. I mean, you don't need to park a big tractor in front of what we're doing and then put flags on it and go, ooh. When we started the Farm Beginnings program, we built a farmer network that has over 100 sustainable farmers across the state involved in it. And we really didn't know what it was going to do beyond be a mentorship base for the Farm Beginnings students so that they had people to go to with questions. That thing has become a community. And they help each other. They hold trainings. They hold teach-ins. And they work with each other. You know what it's not, though? There's no drama. There's no... and it's hard even to sell to funders about why this is important because there's no damn drama, It's just like, no, they're farmers. They work together and they're making good food. And one thing that we do as well, answering your question, is we have a local food directory. And we just ask people to write a description of what they do in the local food directory. And that now has 145 listings in it. And then we give it away. It tears my heart out because they cost about $2 a piece to print. Every time it gets bigger, I'm going, oh man, that's going to cost more money. But we give it away, we just give it away, and it's something that has helped those producers and helped the consumers kind of get through that because I think it's important that you've got to answer that question, what works and what doesn't. And one of the best ways is by talking to the farmer or, in my opinion, growing it yourself.
Well, this question actually is related to the other one about dairies because I had the same issue. I use cornucopia.org to check the dairies before I go shopping. And then I was told by a friend, well, there was a big special on television that none of that is accurate data. And we don't have a local dairy, no place close. And so it is hard to know what to do. So I'm still going with cornucopia because no one's given me an alternative.
Well, I was just going to say, my family, we buy Organic Valley. I know they're a co-op. I know some of the guys milking, some of the families milking for them. They're small family farmers.
Our grocery store has, one of them carries that. That is highly rated on cornucopia.
Yeah, that's what we buy.
And I would point out too, in the light of this continuous improvement, about 2 years ago, the organic standards came out with a grazing requirement finally. Now their cows are required to be on grass. In the past, it just said they had to be access to pasture. And there were some 5,000 cow dairies that had a 10-acre feedlot, and once in a while a blade of grass might come up. But now they have to have 30% of their diet from grass for 120 days out of the year, at least. A real grass-based dairy, we probably have 4 times that much grass in our diet for our cows, but nevertheless, that is a standard that caused some changes in Horizon. Some of these areas had to change drastically. And also Horizon, I'm not thinking for any one or other. Horizon does have some family farms in there as well, so. But Organic Valley, I'm partial to that too. They're a co-op, they're owned by the farmers, they're controlled by the farmers, that's a good thing.
Radiance is also highly rated.
The other thing that I should mention we just did is Dakota Rural Action for 4 years has been fighting with the Department of Agriculture in South Dakota, passed rules for raw milk sales. And this year in the legislature, we finally passed some rules, some legislation that will make rules that raw milk producers can live with, and you can finally buy raw milk and cream in South Dakota from farmers legally.
Not in Iowa.
No.
Mr. James mentioned the directory for growers, and in Des Moines they started an online system of Eat Greater Des Moines, and so restaurants and consumers can look up and find products. Who else?
He went behind you, so.
Francis, to you. So, in terms of this elephant in the room regarding the problems with the nitrate and the corn and soybean crop, and this is all this misinformation that's coming out, what can we do to really drive? What do you see are the most effective ways to really drive the conversation to actually get this to be addressed in a real, meaningful way?
I think that we need to insist that we can have regulation in a way that can adapt to each farm. And when they say that you can't have regulation because one size doesn't fit all, we just can't accept that. We have to point out that that's just a diversion. And we just have to talk to our legislators. Like I said, recently some friends of mine actually from Iowa State University went and talked to the legislature. And they used, unfortunately, a little bit of scientific jargon. They said that there's a mismatch between the availability of nitrogen in the soil and the uptake of nitrogen by the crops, which is kind of what I said earlier emphatically, that the system's flawed. But nevertheless, what the legislators took out of that is that nature's flawed. And that mismatch of nature's flawed. And part of that, I'm sure they had a little help from an organization, the farm organization that I won't mention here. The misinformation, we have to get right to the core. This system is flawed. We have tile drain soils.
That has a reference to the Farm Bureau.
It's flawed. We have to have something to treat that nitrate, either cover crops or some wetlands, because we have to attack the real problem. And even like when Vilsack came into town a while back, he talked about how we need some new technology for better fertilizer applications. That will not help. The research shows that will help maybe 5% to reduce the nitrate, because it's not really over-application of nitrogen per se that's a problem. It's the fact that the way it's done, the cropping system works. That's the problem. That's the real core of the problem.
Hi, my name is Arvid Oliver. My question is for Mr. James. There is currently proposed a pipeline from South Dakota across the state of Iowa to handle crude oil coming down from the North Dakota fields. And I would like to know what, if any, experiences you have had in the environment with that pipeline as it proceeds across South Dakota.
Well, we have experience with pipelines. We started fighting the Keystone XL pipeline in 2007. Being a small organization, as those of you members of ICCI know, when this one got proposed, we were unable to really marshal our resources to go after it right away. We just recently have gotten some resources to start working on it, and we're going to go at it kind of the same way we did with the Keystone pipeline. We're going to go at it from the landowners, and we're going to work with the landowners so they block themselves into a negotiating block, and they can negotiate easements as a block with the pipeline. And the reason for that is it slows the process down. There have been 2 Keystone pipelines built. The first one went through and came down the east side of South Dakota and Nebraska, and it slid through fast and under everyone's radar screen. A few years later, they proposed the big Keystone XL pipeline, and what we were able to do in 2007 was slow it down. And then the national groups started paying attention, getting involved, and really putting pressure on. And we hope that's what's going to happen with Dakota Access, that if we in Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota can slow it down, that it's gonna raise the questions that are important for the climate, for, is this where the infrastructure money that we have to build needs to go? And we hope that we can have a similar impact on the process with this pipeline that we had on Keystone XL.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
My question is specifically about atrazine and how it's consistently polluting our water supply, and the fight that Berkeley endocrinologist Tyrone Hayes has with Syngenta right now. I was wondering where all you guys stood on it. So,
What is it? Atrazine. Atrazine is a herbicide that's been showing up in groundwater for years, actually. I just actually recently saw a review of EPA's initial actions where they approved all these chemicals, and it was pretty critical, saying that a lot of these things were rushed through. The science was given to them by the industry, and then once it was approved, then it was approved, and then it was very difficult now to get it off. You have to have a lot of research, and who's doing it? Who's doing research to show that it's not good for us? So we're in a catch-22. It's rushed in these chemicals, and now we don't have any means to it's going to take a long time to really get to the bottom of some of these things.
Okay, thank you. We have a sign-in sheet. I'm just curious as to where it is. Everybody get their name on the sign-in sheet? Where's it at right now? Matthew's got one, or are there any others?
Might be completed.
Okay. I've got a few people right here.
That table. Okay, good.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, our second panel discussion will include Barb Caldwell. Barb is a fourth-generation family farmer from Adair County, Iowa, and she got involved in farm activism during the 1980s farm crisis. Barb is a longtime member of Iowa CCI. Also on this panel will be Alicia Harvey. She directs the advocacy and issues work at FarmAid and serves as FarmAid's key issues and analyst. Key issues analyst and strategist. FarmAid has worked with Iowa CCI and communities throughout the state and the nation for decades. And our third member will be Mark Schultz. He's the policy and organizing director at the Land Stewardship Project. Mark has led numerous successful campaigns around farm and rural policies, such as stopping factory farms and frac sand mines. So we'll kick it off with Barb.
Thank you, Cherie.
Nope.
That one doesn't
You use the wireless.
Thank you, Cherie. My name is Barb Kawa. I'm a proud Iowa CCI member and a fourth-generation family farm from Dexter, Iowa, which is about 35 miles west of here. My great-grandparents and my grandparents and my parents all farmed within 20 miles of where we farm today. And my husband's grandparents and parents all farm the land where we live today. So I guess you could say that we have a family farm legacy at our house. Well, why family farming? There's a peace and a beauty about rural life, a closeness and a caring between neighbors, a sense of accomplishing a good thing in caring for your land, the water, and the livestock that are entrusted to you, a sense of pride in doing it well. And for children, it's a place to roam and play and explore without fear of harm. Values learned growing up on a family farm stay with you the rest of your life. You learn empathy for living things. You learn to take care of what you have. You learn persistence and working towards goals. And there's a humility learned from taking care of land and livestock that depend on you and you alone every day. But rural life of the diversified family farm in the small towns is under assault now by the agribusiness corporations. This system prioritizes profit over soil health, profit over sound crop rotations, profit over local businesses, profit over clean water, and profit over rural lives. They are blinded by power and money. You saw it today at the State Fairgrounds. And they have plenty of both. And then there's us. But this attack, this assault started for me in the 1980s during the farm crisis, where thousands of family farmers were driven off the land. This land was taken over by ever larger farmers. Someone asked me about that today, and they said, well, how many acres do they have? And I said, thousands. Thousands. 5,000, 10,000. It just goes on and on. And so when those family farmers were driven from the land, my husband and I fought back. We fought against the powers that be, even while we tried to save our own operation. And we were able to do that. But the attack continued into the 1990s when House Bill 519 paved the way for large corporate livestock confinements here in the state of Iowa. As regulations and oversight withered, these factory farms grew in our communities, and a man came from 60 miles away to a 7,000 hog breeding operation 2,000 feet from my house. Well,
That ain't right.
that wasn't right.
No.
That's pretty stinky. It was.
In more ways than one.
My family and my neighbors and new friends that we made in surrounding counties joined together with Iowa CCI, and we fought back. We fought for our neighborhood and our community, and we fought for each other, and in the end, we won. There is no factory farm in our community. Well, when I saw what everyday people fighting together could do to change the values in their community and what's happening in their community, I became a fighter with Iowa CCI, and I'm with them today. That's why I'm here. But while we're fighting, big ag corporations like Bruce Rastetters continue to consolidate their power. They influence our legislature, our universities now, and now our national political leaders to consolidate that power. They work through our commodity groups for dairy, pork, beef, and the grains to influence them to speak out, and also a corporate factory farm advocacy group called the, I'll say it, Francis, the Iowa Farm Bureau. These groups have made sure factory farms have few regulations, and then they defunded the oversight body that was put in place to enforce those regulations for you and for me. Well, what are the results? Okay, back in 1997, we had 17,585 hog producers. Today, we have 6,266 corporate factory farms producing over 21 million head of hogs. We also have, of course, millions of turkey, poultry, egg producers, and cattle producers, and dairy, factory farm dairies. And that has resulted, since House Bill 519, in 776 manure spills into the lakes, streams, and rivers of the state of Iowa. Now we have 630 polluted waterways. Now, some may point out that that's the farm business. I point out, well, it wasn't there before the corporate farms. I don't know. That's what it looks like to me. The corporate farm takeover has resulted at the personal level in a shrinking rural community with shrinking tax revenues. Neighbors slowly retire and leave the farm. Again, those farms are bought up by investors and large farmers from across the county in our case. Their homes are bulldozed down and farmed over. Children are few. The neighborhood that we knew is dying. At the same at the state level, corporate factory farms use influence and tax dollars to ever expand their kingdom. Clean water, good soils, thriving schools and communities take a back seat to profit and power. Well, I mean to fight back, and that's why I'm part of a powerful organization for people like Iowa's CCI. And here's what we're fighting for. A government that works for the people and the planet, farming that puts the environment before yields and profits, a Department of Natural Resources that knows clean water is a public trust and holds polluters accountable. We're fighting for a DNR that strongly enforces the Clean Water Act through strong fines and penalties that deter future polluters, not $10,000. We're fighting for permits that hold factory farms to high standards. We're fighting for inspections that find and fix problems before the next spill. And we're fighting for transparency because we all deserve to know what's going on in our own backyards. So fight with us.
Hello. I'm Alicia Harvey. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Issues at Farm Aid.
All right.
How many of you have heard of Farm Aid or know what Farm Aid is?
Yes.
Anybody have no clue, which is fine. Nobody. Wow. Okay, that's great. I think it's kind of funny to be a featured speaker because I feel like you guys don't need it. Like today, everybody got up and spoke and was so inspiring. So it really is very humbling to be here. And I come with very warm greetings from Willie Nelson. Literally, I was asked to say that. He knows you're here. He knows that you're doing this work today. And he believes very strongly in it. And several of you know and saw that he put an op-ed in Politico yesterday calling out Rostetter and this Pony Summit that he put on and elevating this one, Food and Ag Justice Summit. And I just wanted to spend a few moments before talking about, I think the vision we all share for food and agriculture, to talk a little bit about what Willie was seeing in the 80s and why Farm Aid came to be. And for some of you were there and you were part of it, and you don't need me to tell you that. But what you're doing here today is so in the spirit of how Farm Aid started. And Iowa CCI is 10 years older than we are. We're having our 30th year anniversary this year, so we have much to learn from you still. But in the 80s, during the farm crisis, Willie, as he still does today, was touring around the country. And he himself is from a very rural community in Texas. He has said that he didn't have what it takes to be a farmer, so he became a musician. But he cared very deeply about rural communities and was heartbroken about the pain that was going on throughout the countryside, farms in foreclosure, farmer suicides, people and their communities in disrepair, very much because they were sold a bum deal about, that was really policies catered to corporations and to middlemen. They were told to plant fence row to fence row. They were told get big or get out. And to this day, we hear various versions of that. With biotech, it's, you haven't seen the results yet. If you just get out of our way or give up this or that right or stop asking this or that question about this great technology, we would be there already. And Willie's instinct has always been to listen and to witness and to know that people on the ground who are at the forefront of the battles know the answers and have great wisdom and great strength. And normally, Willie would give the microphone over to a farmer after he speaks, so I wish I kind of had Barbara to give it to after I spoke. But I think then Willie thought that the solution was going to be this concert that was very in line with what was going on in the 80s, Live Aid and We Are the World. And that they would raise money, they'd raise awareness, and the government would fix the problem, and then they'd go home and be fine. And came to learn over time that this was a generation and generation and generations to come struggle, that we're in a constant grinding of different views and of different moral centers about food and agriculture and about the nature of our society and what it means to be a citizen in America. And the struggle that everybody here is in is deeply woven with the struggles of many others in this country. We were just standing beside brothers and sisters in labor who are facing very similar fights that we are. You know, the vision of agriculture that I think we all share is good food from family farmers for everyone. What does that mean? It means local control and community, right? It means localities, municipalities, your communities get to write the rules and get to lead the way for the agriculture and food system that you want. It means fair prices for farmers and living wages for all the workers of the food system and really all the workers across our society. It means resilient and restorative agricultural practices that steward our soil, our water, our air, and bring carbon out of the atmosphere and back in the soil. It means fair and competitive markets. We have to bust the trusts. We have to. It's sometimes so hard for people to grasp, but we're right back. We're before where we were when Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle and when we had those really critical progressive era antitrust laws passed. Our market is so consolidated, and it gets a little bit to some of the questions that were already asked about if and whether it's enough to just seek out the good alternatives. We must do that, and we must build it, but we will always be bumping up against those major structures and that kind of chokehold over our markets. And if we don't realize it from the get-go, we'll bump into it 10 years down the road. And it means diversity. It means biodiversity. It means diverse markets. It means the diversity of people in the food system. So what does it take to get there? That was a question I was asked. It's this. It's the work you're doing. It's raising hell. It's having each other's back. So it includes what we saw today, labor being next to us and us being next to labor to speak truth to power. It also means taking care of each other, because these can be sometimes heartbreaking struggles. And it can be hard to see the light when you're in the middle of that tunnel. And we have to create community and lift each other up. And certainly the Farm Aid concerts and that work is in part meant to do that, not only to celebrate and to make sure that on a national stage these messages are getting heard, but also to nurture the community itself and to be that kind of injection at the point in the year to say, keep going, we've got this. And we know we do. We've already made progress. There are signs of us winning, and it's Rastetter itself is the example, that defensiveness that comes from knowing you are promoting and benefiting from a failing system. It's a sign that we're winning. It's a sign we're winning when everybody tries to use the word family farmer. Because we made the case so well that family farmers are the pillars of their community. They are the future. Well, we'll just stick them on the front of that carton. That'll be enough. Right? But that's a sign we're winning. It takes really building deep alliances with sister communities. So labor, teachers, eaters, and being able to talk about our issues in ways that can be heard. Black communities, minority communities. At the end of the day, the same people who vote against our stuff are voting against their stuff too. And we are stronger together, and we have more in common than we have differences. And we have to constantly work to pave over those and to work with them. And it is work. And I think the last thing I'll say is knowledge is power. But we change people when we can hit at a source of inspiration and their conscience. And it's not shaming, it's not guilt, it's through that kind of inspiring sense that there is a better future, because that cynicism comes from pain, right? And the sense that there's nothing I can do. And when we flip it around, and when it's farmers leading the way in that, we're going to see the changes accelerate all the more. So keep it up.
Hi everybody, I'm Mark Schultz. I'm the Policy and Organizing Director of Land Stewardship Project. I'm really glad to be here with you all day today. As we said, long day. Appreciate how strong you all are to be here at this point. Land Stewardship Project has grown 4,000 households that are members of our organization now. We're about 2/3 rural and farm and about 1/3 urban, almost entirely in Minnesota. Couple of things, I'm kind of changing what I was going to say a little bit, but you know, I think people know this, but it bears repeating. I don't care what every study that was ever done, whether it was a church group or an economist, whether it was an anthropologist or a sociologist, every study that's ever done says communities that are surrounded by family farms have more civic participation, higher educational rates, better jobs, you know, churches that are thriving. That's the good life for all, shared. And when they're surrounded by large corporate farms, all those things decline. What we earn, how we participate in society, how our kids do in school, our health. I mean, that is true. And so we have to base what we want in our agriculture on that. We need small, moderate-scale family farms. We need an agriculture that actually delivers what we want. Healthy food, yes. Stewardship of the land, yes. Prosperity for farmers and for all, yes. Justice, because power is shared by all, rather than captured by the corporations and the 1%. When the land owner is actually owned in wide numbers of hands and small businesses are thriving, that brings justice. But I want to say something about how we've come to understand our work as an organization, and I hear it in what we're talking about today. Like when we talk about, you know, how my household buys food, or helping beginning farmers get started, or stopping this factory farm in my community. Well, we call those, I'm going to point to this side of the room and I say, those are the local and the specific, sometimes even the personal issues that really ground us. You know, what am I going to do with my dollar? Well, how am I going to farm my land? What am I going to do about that factory farm? And they're super important. It's important that we learn about. LSV is starting a new thing in soil health, really a deep farmer network around soil health, farmer to farmer. It's super important. We also believe that if we stay there, only there, that we won't create the agriculture that we want. We won't create the society we want. Because which family farmers are you going to help, and what happens to the one that happen to be of a different color or come from a different economic class or just arrived in this country? Because what about the food that our kids are eating in schools, our seniors are eating in senior centers, our infants are, you know, at daycare, our prisoners are eating in the prisons, our sick are eating in the hospitals? You know, it's not just enough to say what I buy in my household. So, same thing about soil health. Well, if the 25 farmers in the network we're building have great soil health, that's great. That's 25 farmers. So we have to talk also about what's over here, this end of the spectrum, which is societal change, systemic change, changes in the structures of our economy and our politics. Because if we don't do that, then there will be people just excluded and beaten down and the rest. So, for instance, in our organization, you heard me mention earlier, we're working for single-payer health care. Because everybody should have health. And that bump that comes from what we say is farmers in Saskatchewan and Manitoba in the 20s and 30s, they not only produce wheat and barley and beef and milk, they produce national health insurance in Canada. So we have to talk about that larger systemic change so that we create the political and the people power so that we're building the markets, that we're building the money so that our schools, our hospitals, our nursing centers, our daycare centers can buy food from farmers in the region. That's going to take money. So that means, you know what? We need to tax the rich. We need to tax the corporations. We're not able to win it right now, but we're looking at a graduated land tax in Minnesota now.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, James was there when it started boiling up in New Ulm a couple weeks ago. So we need to look at those big societal change issues too. And the thing that I want to make is, the point I want to make is, we're all in the same room. Those things exist on a continuum. You do what you know you can do. I might be over here, but I'm looking over my friends over there, and I have to be able to support what they're doing, even if my mission is right here. And the same way. Because just like if this doesn't actually add up to societal change, just the individual actions, so too, if this part of the room is not connected to that, what the hell do you know about soil health? What do you know about what it actually takes for a new farmer to get started? You know, if you're not connected to that, you could write a lot of policies on papers that won't do anybody any good and do a lot of harm. So this has to be connected. And so part of our vision of agriculture, food and agriculture system, is that it exists on both those planes. It has to be personal, specific, local. It has to stop that factory farm. It has to change what we're buying. And it has to create larger policies and drive change. So, down deep, what that's about is the democracy. The sign in our office that we have is democracy, a society in which the people hold the power to govern. That's going to happen through organizations, who are people's organizations, who get the power to govern. And that's like IOCCI here, and it's like organizations that we're building in all of our, beginning to build in all of our states. Now, the opposite of that is the corporate control and the elitism of the 1%. The Rastetters, the Bushes, the Clintons, and the Romneys. I mean, I'm not campaigning for or against anybody. I'm just saying, that's an aristocracy, folks. Yeah. You know, I'm a populist. And that means put people first. We say put people and the land first. What Rastetter today is doing today disgusts me, and it should disgust every red-blooded American, everybody who lives here now, who loves freedom, who worked for it every day, who have fought for it, and who died for it. It's disgusting. So, but here, the change can start in the farmlands, in the towns, in the cities, in the neighborhoods of the Midwest. Let's start building a better society from the ground up. Thank you.
I want to ask your opinions on this concept of a family farm. Because, pretty much every farmer, no matter how big they are, is a family farmer. They say. Every company, whether you're Pioneer or John Deere or Monsanto, say they are for the family farmer. Every politician, when they design policy, this is to support the family farmer. So it's become a concept that, I don't know if it has any meaning. And if we go around spouting that we're for family farmers, well, so is everybody else. So how do we distinguish that? How do we define it? What is a family farmer?
Yeah, any of you can take that. I mean, we have a definition on our wall right next to the one that says democracy. And it could be, there could be arguments about it. The small and moderate scale farm on which the family lives on it and does the majority of the labor and the management. That's what we mean by a family farm.
I like that definition.
I'll add to that. I want you to cop out of it's like pornography, when you see it or something. Not that. But in addition, it's the level of decision and decision-making power, management decisions that can actually. So we have worked. I don't know how many of you know Craig Watts, who's a poultry farmer based in North Carolina. We worked with him very closely at our contract this past year, which was in North Carolina. But he is very self-aware of buying caught in a factory farm system, and he will speak out about it. Does he have a family, and does that family run that farm? Yes, but he knows he does not have any power in that. So we also, I think, make a distinction with the overall system, and we always put it in that context. And as farm aid, we have to do this all the time and explain what we mean by family farmer. But for us, it's as much about a power-making decision.
He can't make the majority of the management decisions.
He can't own his animals.
Well, I'll use the example of a farm family that their base of operations started north of Greenfield. He has 2 sons. And in the 1980s, you could get some of your debt forgiven by FHA. He was an FHA, we were an FHA. And he did have a lot of his land debt forgiven. There's some, other generational money in their family. At any rate, the whole situation evolved into there was him and his 2 sons, and they, along with their cousin with the same last name, probably own, the better part of a fourth of our county, the northwest corner. Now they're over on the northeast corner. They just bought 1,000 acres around where Jim and I live. One of the boys is going to move there. Now, you can guess, and I can guess, of who's going to buy the next farm in our area that comes up for sale. My guess is them. And even though technically they're a family, that is not the concept of family, diversified farms that built our rural communities. And if we all go to that kind of farming, that, you own a fourth of a county and farm a fourth of a county, then there's not going to be much rural life out there anymore. And I think that's part of what we're fighting for, is for that diversification. Is everybody supposed to live in Des Moines, Iowa, or the Quad Cities? What kind of tax base does that build for Iowa? What kind of economic vitality does that build? It doesn't. It puts everybody in the city and a few people out there to run some huge swaths of farmland, and it doesn't make a good economic model. So I think what Mark said is a lot of it, but part of it, what you said about corn, when you see it. But the thing of it is, there's a situation that it's not right, that it's not healthy for your community, and it's not healthy for your state.
I think that maybe that's the other addendum, is it's that question of who benefits and what does the farming operation do for the community in addition. And that can be measured, right? So that's, I think, another piece of it.
Wow, that's great.
My name is Deborah Vanco, and I'm with Women for Food Justice, which is an outgrowth of Occupy Wall Street. And my question is, how do we improve our strategy against corporate agriculture? A lot of times, the populist movement of farmers in a prior generation did a great deal all across this country. I wonder if we need to be more a movement of farmers. Here in the CCI, we have some great activist farmers. But we are not, the majority of us are not farmers. We are just progressives. So where does the future lie? Does it lie with organizing farmers? Thank you.
Yes. I guess I think a few things about it. One, don't be surprised if you are all tapped on to take part in some tractor dates this year as part of Farm Aid's 30th. Which, the AAM, the American Ag Movement tractor dates that preceded, was 78, 79? Yeah, Roger, 78? 79, okay. Yeah, right. That level of farmer organizing and being willing to get up that way and in an organized way, make a stance. And
After this, I'm going to switch to my tablet because my phone is,
economic equation, right?
my battery's getting low and my phone's getting hot.
I think the difference in today's world is also how the context has changed is that there is a need, I think, for sister movements to work together. So not only do we need to strengthen within what we're doing and really do that farmer level organizing, but I think we also have to be smart about building long-standing alliances with others as well, in terms of votes that we need, in terms of people power. But those are my thoughts. Mark's the expert organizing.
Well,
Actually, I'm the least expert at both of you.
I mean, yes, yes, we need to organize farmers, more farmers, but a lot of it depends on what's the change that we're working to build. So if we're working to get money out of politics, we need all of us. We're working for a single payer system, we need all of us. Do we need a strong farmer voice saying how come our current healthcare system is a huge problem? Yes. And why the solution is this way? Yes. But we need all of us. And that's what you're building here in NCCI. So like, you have to be aware of that question and make sure you're building that farm leadership so that it's authentic. And it's all of us that's gonna have to win these big fights. That's what I think.
Other farmers are
I'm gonna archive this, and then in a minute I'll be back up on my tablet.